West Side Story, I often ask my students, of the four creators of the show, of four gay Jews who created the show, which one do you most credit for the soul of the show? Do you have one?
Yeah, certainly the answer to that question has to be Leonard Bernstein. It's so interesting that here we are more than 60 years later, more than 65 years later, and that music still sounds fresh. And that is amazing. So many shows from the 50s have music that sound like they were written in the 50s. And of course, this doesn't sound like it wasn't written in the 50s, but it does sound fresh today still, which is pretty amazing. And I think his contribution is really tremendously responsible for what's going on, even though it wasn't 100% appreciated at the time. It was very well known that when 1957, when it opened, there were very few cover recordings. People weren't singing Tonight Maria. That wasn't happening until later. The movie, of course, made it tremendously successful. Okay, why am I not crediting Arthur Laurents, the book writer? He did a very good job in condensing Shakespeare, but I do hold it against him that he never gave Shakespeare official credit. You've never seen on any poster adapted from Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare. And of course, it's in the public domain. They don't have to, but I think it would have been nice to acknowledge that. I think they were afraid of it. However, one does have to credit Arthur Laurents for coming up with the idea of Anita going to the candy store to say she's going to meet Tony later, and then it turns out that indeed they treat her so terribly that she says Maria is dead. That's far more effective than what happens in the original play with the friar. And what's so interesting too, it's one of those checkmate moments in musical theater that's so interesting when she says, "I'm here to help," and anybody says, Bernardo's girl wants to help. It is impossible to believe that that would be the case. So they're well within their rights to think that she's doing something that's going to harm them. So I do give Arthur Laurents credit for that. But again, he was taking a story that was well known and adapting it. It's a very slim book in the sense of actual pages. So while his contribution is tremendous, I'm still going with Leonard Bernstein. Stephen Sondheim, yes, indeed. This is a very tough third place finish because his lyrics are extraordinary. Even when you think of "make this endless day, endless night," that lyric in Tonight, because when you're waiting for something to happen at night, the day does seem endless. And yet, when you actually are doing what you wanted to do that night, it seems like it's over in 2 minutes because you're having such a good time. So I think that's a wonderful perception, especially for somebody who was officially a first-time lyricist on a Broadway show. And it's wonderful, even simplicity in quintet, when you hear the Jets and the Sharks say, "Well, they began it." Well, they began it. And you know that each of them believes that to the heart and soul. They really believe the other is the aggressor. And of course, that's not true. Somebody had to be the aggressor, but gangs like that, people like that, they just will not admit it. So that's a very skillful lyric as well. So tremendous work by all of them, but still, to me, Bernstein wins by a hair.
Okay, now Jerry Robbins doesn't usually come in fourth place for anything, but in this
Yeah, that's fair. I thought you meant literally of the writers. But it's funny, William Goldman in his book, The Season, talks about the fact that every great musical has to have a great performance in it. Streisand and Funny Girl, Merman and Gypsy, Martin and Peter Pan, that type of thing. He says there's one exception to the rule, and that is Jerome Robbins, who essentially played all the parts anyway. So yeah, if any Jerome Robbins musical really turns out to be a Jerome Robbins musical. So
yeah.
yes, I didn't realize you were going to be including him in the mix. I thought you were just talking about the writing of the show.
Oh, so he's not necessarily fourth in your mind. He might be.
No. And the other thing too, to be fair, he's the one who essentially spurred them to say, get away from this Jewish Italian story that you've been
Right.
writing. Notice what's been happening and do it here, and you'll be much better making East Side Story that they were writing West Side Story. So so he gets a lot of credit for that as well.